Welcome, you Tabletop Tactics fans, to our show. This is an Age of Sigmar General's Handbook review, specifically Season 2 of 2022/2023, kindly sent to us by Games Workshop. Thank you very much for that, Games Workshop.
Also, our first one.
This is our first one.
Yes. Also, I'm Chef and he's Spider, for those of you only just joining us. Hello.
Hello, how are you? So what we have here is the General's Handbook. For those of you which don't know what the General's Handbook is, it's the 40k equivalent of the Grand Tournament packs. It's your matched play way to play, i.e. your quote-unquote balanced competitive way to play. Now you can play it as competitively as you want, but in my general experience, most people, whether they're playing a tournament or not, seem to tend to use the battle plans, much like most people tend to use the GT before Tempest came around. Now a lot of people, of course, play Tempest instead. There you go.
It's almost like structure is good.
Structure is good, yeah. So, okay. Very interesting, because it is our first review of a Sigmar rules system, if you like. And when we first started Sigmar, which is not that long ago, so it's fair to say we are still noobs, really.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now in terms of like production numbers and all that. I think we at time of release, I think we've released to the wild 18 games of Sigmar.
Yes.
Of varying point sizes and like, General's Handbook using and seasons and all that. So new is yes, that is what we are. Yeah. And
we are learning very quickly. But it's fair to say, in terms of the competitive structure, we haven't covered too much of that, because we've been mainly using initially at least, the battle plans from the actual core rules. We'd only just started really using the previous 2022 handbook.
That one. I got it here.
And now we've got this new one.
And now it's back in the bin.
What we're going to do is we're going to cover the realm rules today. So what's changed, because we're in a different realm now.
I think we're still in Gur.
We're still in Gur.
But we're in a different part of Gur.
Legion of War Gallet.
Yeah, it's still Gallet, but it's the change-up.
Instead of Galletian veterans, we have Galletian champions, but we'll get to that in a moment.
Then the heroes have finally become... So I like the way that they involve the narrative into it. It's like the heroes have gone like, right, I know how to fight in this realmscape now. Yeah. So I'm going to use my experience to do it. It is cool. I do like it. Yeah,
and then from a rules point of view, they get to try and shift the meta, if you want to use that terminology, to focus on different types of units. We also have new core battalions, interesting. Artefacts of Power and unique enhancements for your Galletian champions. So we're going to cover all of that. Then we'll go over the grand strategies and battle tactics. And finally, we'll round off with a little summary of the battle plans, much of which are the same, but there are some new ones and some tweaks.
And it goes without saying that all of the stuff in here replaces the previous season. That is now defunct no more. It is an X season. It is bereft of use. And it's as we established, it's back in the bin now, or on your shelf, because it does have some nice little fluff in there. So you can't use the stuff from there in conjunction with this, much like how it changed from the previous General's Handbook, where it was like very monster focused, then it became very infantry focused, and you mentioned champions, which is appropriate because now we're hero focused.
That's right. So why don't we go over the realm rules next? The realm rules have now changed fairly significantly. We have, as I've mentioned, Galletian champions replacing the Galletian veterans. Basically, the key caveat here is that you need to have a model with 10 wounds or less, or under 10 wounds, and be infantry. They can't be mounted to qualify to become a Galletian champion. So it specifically says wounds characteristic of less than 10 that do not have a mount and that are not unique. You can't be a special character either, a named character, which is, I suppose, an important distinction. And they gain the Galletian champions keyword. So you get it automatically. You don't have to do anything else. So they're encouraging those little foot characters, which I don't know. I couldn't honestly say whether they weren't being seen that much. I know obviously it seemed there's a lot of monsters running around. Whether that meant that the little foot characters weren't appearing in meta lists or not, I can't say. I'm not experienced enough to say.
I think it was very dependent on the army. So like, to use Seraphon for an example, like skink priests, star priests were used quite a lot. But even things like a demon prince, he is less than 10 wounds, doesn't have a mount. You know, so stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think the previous season, it's always been a bit of a weird one with the General's Handbooks because there's a clear through line as to what they want to happen.
Yeah.
And I think this is the first time where I've seen it where it actually is happening.
Okay.
So the first one was very monster focused, but then they go, here's a bunch of stuff to allow you to be really good against monsters. So monsters were just like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
And then they moved, and then in the season 1, it was like, here's infantry, but then here's a way of just really easily killing infantry. This one seems a bit more focused.
Right. Right.
So I don't know whether they weren't being used a huge amount, but as you'll see, they are very important to making the games of Season 2 easier to win.
And it's interesting because the second rule is called the key to victory. And they're clearly trying to push the use of these individual characters by helping to protect them, because the second rule says that Galletian champions cannot be picked as a target at all with attacks made by missile weapons. So it's not even a -1 to hit. You can't pick them as a target if they're within 1 inch of any friendly battle line unit.
Yeah, so it's got to be battle line. Yeah. So, you know, again, there's that sort of incentive to have some battle line, and that's very easy for certain armies because of the way that the system works in the unlocking stuff. You'll need to look very carefully as to what becomes a Galletian champion and what doesn't, as well as your use of battle line. There will be some enemies. The beauty of Sigmar is that you must have free battle line.
Yeah.
And a lot of armies will have battle line that are very conducive to their sort of play style or their particular, like, so for example, we played a game the other day, which you may have seen on our socials. If you have not already seen them, follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, right here on the tube of views. And you were using Iden of Deepkin.
Yep.
And because you had an Acalian Lord, or Acalian King rather, your eels become...
Morsar Guard become
Battle Line,
which is amazing because they're amazing.
Yeah, they're really good. So that's a nice benefit for them to be able to sort of swim around and protect your foot characters, like your, what they call like tide casters, things like that.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I was using the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. I've got Archon the Black, who's a monster, and I've got a Liege Lord who is on a mount, so I wouldn't get any benefit from those.
No, well, interestingly, I only had the one character in that list, didn't I? The Arcadian King.
Yeah.
And because he's mounted, so I didn't even get to use the Galletian champion rule.
No.
Funnily enough, but
that kind of unlocking battle line thing could be also quite crucial. So another little thing to look out for.
Yeah. Now the third, you get the second part of the special rule that you get for being a Galletian champion is something called Desperate Action, which is quite cool. It allows you to, if you're taking the second turn, perform 2 heroic actions. They have to be different heroic actions in that phase instead of 1. So you can't, give 2 buffs, identical buffs out, for example. But it does allow you to do an extra heroic action, which you normally can't do with a character, which can be very useful for buffing.
Well, that's useful for buffing because you can give yourself the extra CP. You can heal yourself.
Yeah, I'm thinking Vampire Lords on foot for my Soulblight Grave Lords. That could be very useful. Because I can give one, it's in the
heroic action.
Phase.
It's heroic action,
It's in command phase, hero phase, forgive me.
Yeah, so is it specifically, so if you're taking the second turn, one Galletian champion can carry out two different, so you can't do it with one and then do it with someone else.
No, you've got to nominate the one.
Yeah, you've got to nominate the one, and obviously they do need to be a Galletian champion, but there's a few specific heroic actions for certain factions. So I think I'll use the Demon Princes as an example, or Chaos Slaves to Darkness. They've got a few unique ones, like there's one for their wizards where they can cast on 3d6.
Okay.
But if they roll any double ones, they take d6s, so they're drawing upon the powers of chaos.
Nice.
But you could do that to really ensure you get the power off, and then do heroic willpower to heal yourself, or heroic recovery to heal yourself. So there's a few little cool things. It doesn't necessarily have to be the 2 heroic actions here, because there are new heroic actions you can do.
Yes, there are. So why don't we go to that next? So there are 2 new heroic actions. Only, of course, a Galletian champion can carry them out.
It's a running theme.
So the first one's called Strike at the Opening, and the second one's called Lead by Example. Strike at the Opening is picking one friendly Galletian champion within 3 inches of an enemy unit. That hero can fight if it has not already fought in that phase. Now, given this is a heroic action, how can they have already fought that phase?
There's a few abilities which allow you to fight out of sequence. Very, they're quite rare.
Since I've not come across that yet, that's why I asked that question.
Yeah, I don't believe Mighty Destroyers isn't one, because that's all about movement.
Yeah.
I'm just using the ones that we sort of have in our collection, guys. I don't believe there's anything for Seraphon or Soul Blight or any of the Death armies, but there are a couple which, or at least maybe in some of the older factions, maybe it could also be future-proofing.
We you guys know overall, let us know. That'd be quite interesting.
Because there's a bunch of battle tomes coming out this year as well, so for all we know, something might come out where it's just like, once per game, this model can attack in the hero phase. You go, so you can't attack, use that attack again, which would be pretty powerful. But that alone is very powerful.
It is very powerful because it allows you to suddenly fight out of sequence, doesn't it?
Which is huge.
Effectively,
you don't get
fight first there because you're going to hit the enemy and they're not going to hit you.
You don't get fought back either.
No, you don't.
Does it?
But here's the thing. It says, however,
this is what I was getting at.
That hero cannot fight again in that phase. It says that phase, doesn't say that turn, that phase. So, all right, you get to fight for free in the hero phase. But the strike last effect applies to that hero until the end of the turn. So you are punished after the fact. You won't be able to strike until the very last in the end of the turn when it does come to the fight phase or the combat phase. But you will effectively get to fight twice if you're still alive in a turn, which is potentially on that foot character, really nasty.
Yeah, and some of them can be made quite beefy in terms of defenses. Yeah. Is that specific? Because there's a few heroic actions which are in your hero phase. Is that specifically in your hero phase or in the hero phase?
It just says pick one friendly Galletian champion within 3 inches of an enemy unit.
So this is a heroic action.
With a friendly Galletian instead of any other
heroic action you can. So you can.
You could do it in.
You can use that in your opponent's
hero phase,
which could be again quite useful because if it's their turn, they're going to fight first anyway. Yeah. If you're in combat with somebody that you just didn't quite kill,
you finish it off.
Finish it off.
Yeah,
it's a really powerful rule. It's
really good. And then you've got lead by example, which is picking one friendly Galletian champion that has a sworn bodyguard unit. So this is, we haven't spoken about this yet, but basically you can nominate a unit to be a sworn bodyguard unit. They have to be battle line if I remember correctly. Coming soon, yeah. But anyway, your sworn bodyguard unit that has just carried out the strike at the opening heroic action. So if you've used the strike at the opening heroic action, you've just fought in the hero phase with your champion, you can then select your sworn bodyguard unit. If that unit's wholly within 6 inches of the champion and also within 3 inches of an enemy unit, doesn't have to be the same unit though, mind.
Oh, okay.
Just says an enemy unit.
Okay.
That sworn bodyguard unit can fight if it has not already fought that phase. However, they too will get the strike last effect applied until the end of the turn. But basically, this character and the sworn bodyguard unit can fight in either hero phase, providing those caveats are in place, which is, I think, very powerful depending on the faction that's involved and the character that's involved.
Now, you will need to be going second to use that because it's two different heroic actions.
Yep.
And obviously, you then need to do strike at the opening and then lead by example. So you can't use that in combination with another heroic action or anything like that.
So if that character had a separate,
let's say he wanted to do, I'm going to do my finest hour, but you could do my finest hour and then strike at the opening.
Yes, you could. Yeah,
just to buff yourself up. It's a really cool mechanic. I like it, and it also gives a bit of a boost for the person that is going second, because if you survive the attacks and you've got your bodyguard nearby, you can, and your opponent doesn't manage to like do enough damage to them, you can really punish them in your turn too, or your turn because you'll have been going second. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It is. So with heroic actions basically covered, let's cover the Realmsphere magic. There is an all-new spell which all wizards know, and it's called the Grinding Teeth of Gallet, and it's actually, in my opinion, pretty nasty.
It's quite bonkers.
Grinding Teeth of Gallet is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12 inches. Okay, so you do need to be relatively close. However, if successfully cast, pick one objective within range and visible to the caster. Then roll a dice for each unit within 6 inches of that objective. Now, it isn't enemy unit, it is unit. So this would affect your units too. On a 4+, you take D6 mortal wounds. Now, my understanding of the General's Handbook and competitive Sigmar, much like competitive 40k, is that you generally want to be near or on those objectives to win the game. You know, points and prizes and all that. This is a really powerful deterrent, you know. Now, it is D6 mortal wounds. You might roll a 1, you might, you know.
You got to get a 4 up to get it in the first place.
Most battle line units will be able to sustain a bit of that damage, but, you know, if you've already fought or they're already a weakened unit, this could easily finish things off. And because it's every unit as well, you could get some pretty amazing,
This is where I'm not sold on it. Yes, okay, it's a short range, it's visible, it affects your units, it's a 4+, it's a D6. But why go through all the motions of trying to make foot characters viable and then do a whole bunch of battle tactics and mission rules about only Galletian champions can do this on objectives, and you just go, no, they got eaten. Because they're not protected from that.
No, they're not.
Now, it's only a 50-50, it's a short range, blah, blah, blah. Like I say, there's a lot of hoops to go through. But that is so... It could be so game-changing.
Yes, it could. I also, just from a game mechanic point of view, always dislike the thing where you have to do multiple rolls for something, which you've got might end up in like a wet fish slap and just be like a giant waste of time, because then you've got to roll for every single unit. First of all, I roll to cast it, then I roll for every single unit, then I've got to roll a d6. It's not a set amount of damage, then I've got to roll a d6 for each one. Then if you've got shrugs, you might have to roll those. You know, it becomes just... There's a big faff.
There's a lot of stuff going on there for something which is generally quite... It's going to come up once in a blue moon, and it's like with the Purple Sun, the old school Purple Sun, that everyone will regale you of the time where the Purple Sun ate 2 greater demons at the same time, and it's an amazing sort of story narrative moment. And there'll be times where this comes up in a game, and like if you're playing a friendly game, and it's like it's going to be hilarious. Like, the wizard runs onto the objective, casts it, and then eats his opponent, but then gets eaten himself, and you're both going to have a laugh about it. In a competitive scene, you can be like, "Oh, the game's ruined. The game's over. I've lost now because you rolled a 4+."
It's a very wacky, out there.
It feels sort of it's very Sigmar to me, which is this is really fun and it can be hilarious and seems like a really fluffy narrative, fun mechanic, and then people turn around and say, "But this is a competitive game," and you go. It doesn't. Sometimes it just doesn't feel like that.
Sometimes
when
it feels
you've got
a bit
stuff
too
like,
random.
Yeah, and now I know obviously random in a dice game, right? And I'm sure there's competitive players looking at that going, "Well, you're never going to bother because it's so random." But then those same competitive players will have this done to them once and be like, "Well, that was silly." And you go, "Well, this is kind of my point. I'd rather that just not exist at all.
Just not be there.
Just not exist at all."
Yeah, I think. I would love to hear your thoughts, because obviously we are relatively new when it comes to Sigmar. But you know, from a competitive standpoint, does a spell like that, is it good for it? Is it? I personally find the mysterious terrain rules also, for the same reason, arbitrary, which is why I don't. I find them a bit too much. From a competitive point of view and also just admin point of view. But be interesting to hear your thoughts. Right, finally we got the Realm command. No retreat, no surrender is the special rule. Each player can use the following command ability in addition to any others that they have. So this is something that everyone knows. You can use this command ability at the start of the combat phase. The unit that receives the command must be a friendly unit that is not a hero or monster, that did not charge in the same turn, and that is within 3 inches of an enemy unit. That unit cannot make pile-in moves in that phase, but you add 1 to the attack's characteristic of melee weapons used by that unit until the end of the phase, excluding mounts if it has any. So you can't pile in.
It's very interesting.
I mean, if you're already in combat,
if you're in the swirl,
then obviously it's a no-brainer. You go, great. Well, I'll just give an extra attack.
Any unit?
At the start of the combat phase.
Just any unit that's not a hero or monster.
Not a hero or monster.
So you could use that on, say, a unit of cavalry or a unit, or, there's certain units that have like 3-inch ranges, at which point they go, great, we're laughing. I think it's quite situational. There's going to be times where you're not going to use it, or your opponent's going to be... It could also work in your favor as well. Like, let's say you've got unit of Graveguard, right? I might charge them because I know that Graveguard can hit like a truck. I might charge them and just kind of go, you know what? I'm just going to actually... This is more to stop you from counter-charging me in your next turn. Just in case you get the double, for example. Or you win the roll-off, rather. I'm going to charge you, or you're in a position to charge, and I'm going to kind of like, trap you, as it were. Move over here so that you're not getting a huge amount in. But you might have that ability. So, I'm going to do that, because then if you use it, you're getting really little attacks. And then you go, well, I'm just not going to use it and pile in. And I go, I've now shot myself in the foot by getting less attacks. So there is some counterplay to it, and there is some nuance to it. Realistically, that's for stuff that's already like deep in, you know, a two sort of turn slog that's happening, or you've got lots of range on your weapons. It does kind of tie in with the Galletian Veterans core battalion, which we'll get to in a moment, but kind of, as you'll sort of see.
Well, speaking of which, why don't we do the core battalions next? Core battalions, kicking off with the Galletian command. It's a powerful one, and it is effectively what your heroic actions allow you to do, but normally in your normal combat phase. So basically you have a leader, and you have a battle line unit. And what you can do is the infantry unit in this battalion is, to be fair, does it have to be battle line?
Doesn't have to be battle line.
It has to be infantry.
Yeah, a unit with a wounds characteristic of 4 or less that isn't a leader, artillery, behemoth, or mounted.
Yeah, so it doesn't even have to be battle line per se. So it could be an elite infantry.
Chosen, or Iron Guts, or other stuff.
Well, the unit that you do pick becomes the Sworn Bodyguards unit. So this is what we were talking about earlier of the Galletian champion. In the combat phase, when you pick the Galletian champion in this battalion to fight for the first time that phase, if the Sworn Bodyguards unit is wholly within 6 of the champion and has also not yet fought, it can immediately fight afterwards.
Yeah. Powerful rule.
It's a very powerful rule. It's basically what the vampire rule on foot has for Soulblight Gravelord.
Unparalleled Mastery or something like that?
Yeah. And that's also very good for them. So now everyone gets it if you get this core battalion.
Basically, anything that allows you to fight out of sequence or in subsequent sequences in Sigmar is very strong.
It's very good.
That's great for stuff like bosses on foot in Iron Jaws with brutes, because he can fight, and then if he doesn't quite finish them off, then they can fight, and then you can activate the smashing and bashing. You know, stuff like that is great for weirdly White Kings. Now, obviously, you wouldn't be able to use it on a mounted White King, but that effectively lets them act as a pseudo vampire lord for Graveguard. Ogres are gonna love that because it's 4 wounds or less. Ogres are 3 or 4 wounds, depending on the ogre, I think. You know, I think Fire Slayers are going to love that. What are they called? Daughters of Cain. They're going to love that. Anything that allows you to fight and then fight, or fight and turn off someone else's fighting, or interrupt, as it were, is a really powerful rule. And you can use that in conjunction with the hero actions. Let's say you're going second, and you go, right, I've been charged by my opponent and they don't kill my Galletian champion. So he fights, then my friends fight. So they've now neutered this unit, but we've not quite busted out of combat. It's my turn next. Heroic action, fight with the friends. It's now my move. I've broken out. It's now my movement phase. I get to move and charge something else. That can flip the game on its head.
Oh yeah, absolutely savage.
It's almost like a double turn within the turn, in a way.
Now, this is the weird part. The next battalion is Galletian Sharpshooters. I don't agree with this as a battalion, because it directly contradicts what they're trying to do with protecting the characters, which would encourage you to take them. So it's called Galletian Sharpshooters. All you need are 3 units.
With the same restrictions, so everything in these battalions is the same restrictions.
Focus on your mark is their special rule. Attacks made with missile weapons by units in this battalion are not prevented from targeting Galletian champions that are within 1 inch of any enemy battle line units. Now, it seems to me that if you've got any firepower-based army in Sigmar, where, you know, I don't know whether it's Namati Reavers or whatever it might be, that you're automatically going to take this if there's a big, I suppose, appearance of foot characters to ensure that you can just play as normal. Now, I don't know why you would put that in if you're also trying to encourage the foot characters to be able to survive next to their Sworn Bodyguard.
They did the same thing with bounty hunters, which was a really big point of contention. Now, we didn't use bounty hunters, but I'm sure I'm telling a lot of you Sigmar veterans how to suck eggs. But for those of you that are joining us on our journey, the reason why we never used it was because, quite frankly, it was really silly.
Because what did it do? Because I don't know what it did.
So what it was a similar principle, although it was 2 to 3 units of infantry, but it was any unit that wasn't I think it was, I've got it right here. Let me just double check, just to make sure that I'm getting the old rules right. So it was any unit that was not a leader, artillery, or behemoth. So you could use mounts, so you could put your eels in there. You could put your alapexes in there.
Which are amazing firepower units.
If the target of an attack made with a melee weapon by a model in this battalion is a Galletian veterans unit, you add 1 to the damage characteristic. So like, why would you like? So people were basically not running Galletian veterans or going minimal battle line because it was like, well, they just die if someone brings bounty hunters.
Yeah.
Now the argument could be made.
So my Alapexes could have been bounty hunters.
They could have been like damage
they've
4 or something.
Vicious
whatever they were. Now it's melee only, but you know, you all of a sudden you go, well, if I put my Galletian veterans in there, most of them are damage 1, but most battle line. Now they're damage 2. So against most things, I'm either one-shotting stuff like you're one-shotting Stormcast, you're one-shotting Chaos Warriors, you're halving Ogres, you're killing 2 infantry at a go for other armies. Yeah. Like, if my opponent has that, then it's just going to be an absolute bloodfest. Yeah. But if they don't, then I've got such a huge advantage. Now, the counter argument is that, yes, you'll be putting them in there. You need to have 3 units with the very strict limitations. So your Alapexes have more than 4 wounds. They can't go in there. Yeah. You must have 3 units in there. Now, not all of them need to be ranged attacks, but then obviously you're losing out on the benefit of it. Yeah. And a lot of the big problems come from sniping characters with things like an Ironclad or Alapexes or a catapult. Right. You know, so it's like those things are not eligible for it. But if you've got a unit of if you've got 2 units of 10 Lumineth Sentinels, just put a spear unit in there to give your archers the ability to shoot stuff. Yeah. You could say, oh, is that as good as a 1-drop? That is debatable, of course, because 1-drop is very powerful in Sigmar because it still allows you to do the priority. Yeah. But when there's so much revolving around the Galletian champs in terms of the battle tactics and some of the missions, I would argue that the armies that have the benefit of doing the shooting are just going to do it. Yeah, well, I just to me, it seems strange to just put a direct counter into the thing which you're trying to encourage. You could argue that the cost is... I say that as a beginner, right, to Sigmar. It's the same with Bounty Hunters. It seems odd to me. The cost is you're giving up another core battalion, which gives you certain other abilities, or you need to have 3 units. If I'm a firepower army, I don't see, please leave a comment below. Educate me. If I'm running Lumineth and I've got 2 units of Sentinels, I'm putting 2 of them in there and I'm going to put one of my Spear Boys in there. Yeah, and I'm imagining armies like Karajon Overlords, which admittedly I don't know, but I know that they do have firepower, would also benefit from this. Yeah, anyway, it is interesting. Right, they've got 1 more core battalion. Yes. They're Galletian veterans. Yes. There's a minimum of 2 here, but you can have up to 4 in the battalion. Their rules called the Bonds of Battle. When a model in this battalion makes an attack with a melee weapon, you can target an enemy unit within half an inch of another model from the attacking unit instead of using the weapon's range characteristic from that attack. So effectively, should we say 2 rank fighting? Effectively, and it depends on your so for... I'll use Graveguard again as an example, just to put it into context for you. You've got a 25mm base and a 1-inch range. You don't need that. No. Seraphon Temple Guard with their massive pole arms have a 1-inch range. Yeah. Don't get me started on that. They should have a longer range, But I mean, Seraphon, I'm sure everyone's just like, oh, look at the salty Seraphon player getting upset that his army is not as powerful as it should be. And I'm like, Seraphon are very silly guys, don't get me wrong. But they're on a 32mm base. Yes. So it's kind of like, there's times where you go, an army that looks, or a unit that looks like it should be able to fight like that can't. It's a cool rule, and I do like it. That is an aspect of the Galletian veterans that I did like from the previous one. We just never used it because we do also like the Rangers. But now that that's an optional thing... Well, we will be using these now. In fact, you did use the... It worked quite nicely, actually. It does work quite nicely. Use it for what was the unit called in Soulblight? The Ossiarchs? It was the Stalkers I used it on, because they've got 4 wounds. Yeah. So this is what I mean. Again, it's that weird thing you go, oh, they're infantry. And I'm like, the giant... 4-faced, 4-armed, 4-wound things are infantry. I mean, they technically are, but anyway. I like that. It's a nice option to have. Yeah. So that's battalions. We'll briefly cover some artifacts and some unique enhancements for your champions next. Let's see what they can do. The Artefacts of Power. So this is a selection of 3 extra artifacts that you are eligible to choose from. Much like a normal Artifact of Power, you still only get the 1 or 2 if you've got the ability to take extra enhancements. And these are for, guess what, Galletian champs only. And some of them are really quite nice. So you've got the Tusk Helm, the Night Flyer Cloak, and the Griff Feather Charm. The Griff Feather Charm will make players who missed the old, what was it called? I think it was the Protective Ward or something, or the Protection Charm, which it gives you a 5-up ward save.
Okay, yeah.
The difference being, so that was originally, it was a 5-up ward save in the core rules, and everyone just went, I'll take that on my dragon.
Yeah.
So they FAQ'd it to be a 6-up ward save.
Right.
Still useful, but not an auto take. Remember, this is only on foot characters, so it's not quite as potent, but still a nice little defensive benefit, especially if you've got a list of artifacts which aren't amazing, like some armies do. You then have the Night Flyer Cloak, which is during deployment, you can set them up on one side and say that they're going to be in ambush, so they effectively get to arrive within 1 inch of a friendly battle line unit at the end of your movement phase, but still 9 inches away from all enemy units.
Yeah.
Actually quite useful if your opponent has Sharpshooters.
Yeah. Because then you
Weirdly,
can get them into range and in position.
And then, but you go, but I'm not there anyway.
Yeah.
So it's fine. I really like the Tusk Helm, but that's because I like offensive stuff. So after you've made a charge move, you pick one enemy unit within 1 inch of the bearer, you roll a number of d6 equal to the unmodified charge roll, and for each 4+, they take a mortal wound. Okay. Yeah. Which is great. Yeah. It doesn't stack with any other abilities that do something similar, so I immediately saw that and just went, so an ogre character rolls like 20 d6 on the charge. Oh my god.
Or to wound bomb.
Yeah. No. You pick one. So if the bearer already has an ability, after they charge, you must pick which effect applies. You cannot use both. Okay. But that's great if you like, now you could, there's going to be times where you go, I rolled a 4-inch charge. Oh, no.
Yeah.
But there's going to be times where you roll a 10 and you go, boom, boom, I just killed 5 models on the way in because I rolled really hard. I really like it. It's very fun. Yeah. Then you've got some unique enhancements. Now these are, you can always take one aspect of the champion enhancement for your army. And each time you take one, you can pick one below, give it to a Galletian champion. And if you are able to take an extra enhancement, again, by using things like the Warlord Battalion, then you can take an aspect of the champion as an extra unique enhancement. Yeah. Much like these sorts of things already exist. So everyone has access to these unique enhancements. Again, Galletian champs only. And you've got 4 to pick from here. Right. 3 of them are a once per battle ability, so they're a cool power-up mechanic. You go Super Saiyan. Yeah. Your power levels hit 9,000. Yep. So you've got Tunnel Master. So instead of picking this Galletian champion to make a normal move, specifically a normal move, so you can't do this to get out of combat, you can remove them from the battlefield and set them up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units.
A Veil of Darkness.
It's a Veil of Darkness, but only for the champ. Yeah. Useful if like someone's bearing down and you go, absolutely not.
Yep. See ya.
Oh, you left that objective open there, Lawrence.
Yeah, which could be really useful.
It can be very, very powerful. You've then got Fueled by Ghoulish Rage. Before you allocate a wound or mortal wound to this Galletian champion, and that wound or mortal wound would cause them to be slain, you can instead roll a d6. On a 3+, the wound or mortal wound is negated. You heal d3 wounds, and any other wounds that currently remain to be allocated are also negated. Yeah, so you go, I've just done 20 wounds to your character. You just go,
doesn't matter.
Well, on a 3+, I don't care. Yeah. And I also, because it negates all the wounds, so you'd still be on 1 wound, and then you heal d3. Yeah. So you go, strike me down and I will become more powerful than you can possibly imagine. Again, very powerful. I think Summon as a Rhinox is going to be seen everywhere, however. The Galletian champion counts as 10 models for the purpose of contesting objectives.
That's pretty massive.
As long as there's no other enemy Galletian champions within range of that same objective. Okay. But that is not a once per game effect. No, it's always on.
Yeah, it's really nasty.
That to me is going to be an auto take in every army that is able to take Galletian champions.
Very nasty.
Having said that, there are ways of using there's ways of using all of these, quite frankly. Leadership of the Alpha is also very strong. Once per battle, you can issue one of the following commands up to 3 times in the same phase with no additional command point cost. Rally, all-out attack, all-out defense, or redeploy. Very powerful abilities to use anyway.
So you can do that for free?
So you still have to spend 1 CP, but you can do it on 3 different units.
Well, at the same time? Wow.
So if you go, oh, this is a really important combat that I survive, all-out defense for everywhere.
That is very powerful.
This is I need to get
for 1
this,
CP.
For 1 CP. I need to get this alpha off. All-out attack, all-out attack, all-out attack. It has to be the same one.
Yeah, but
it does have to be the same one.
Still, if you've got multiple units in combat.
Yeah.
That's nasty.
It's very powerful. Yeah. That's very powerful. Like I think it's like Fueled by Ghoulish Rage is good.
Yeah.
I think the Tunnel Master is quite good in very select scenarios. Stubborn as a Rhinox and Leadership of the Alpha are always going to be powerful. Yeah. And I honestly, I say that Stubborn as Aranox is probably the auto take. Weirdly, no, actually. I think Leadership of the Alpha is, because you can hold the objective all you want. Doesn't matter if you're dead.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't matter if you count as 10, but I've got 20 models nearby because I did all out defense.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
It's really powerful, really powerful.
Next would be the grand strategies and the battle tactics.
4 of them are the same as last time.
Okay, so why don't we just go over these right now?
Yeah, tame the land, defend what's ours, take what's theirs, and stay. And 3 of them. I'm looking at. I'm getting my
You're getting your battle tactics, your grand
strategies. So 3 of them are the same for the grand strategies. 4 of them are the same for the battle tactics.
Yeah.
But back to grand strategies. Tame the land, defend what's ours, and take what's theirs are still there. They are identical to what they were. The next 3 are. Guess what?
Tell me.
They revolve around Galatian
champions, yeah.
Weird that.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's the theme of the book. Yep. So, fine. Stake a claim. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy. If 3 or more Galatian champions are wholly within enemy territory.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen, really.
I don't see that being taken very often, unless, of course, you could take it with, and is it 3 or more Galatian champions?
3 or more friendly Galatian champions are wholly within enemy territory.
That's a big ask.
Because you got to remember that your grand strategies are still picked at your list. Now, if they were picked at the deployment stage, you'd be like, you know what, in this mission, I might be able to do it.
Yeah.
You have to really build around grand strategies for the most part anyway. I can't really see that one being taken.
Yeah, also, to have more than 3 foot characters which qualify. I mean, again, limited knowledge with Sigmar armies, but opponent would only need to kill 1.
Yeah.
And
if you're going for 3,
it,
it's a big risk. Survivor's Instinct. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if the model picked to your general is a Galatian champion, and that model is contesting an objective that is wholly outside of your territory.
Right.
That one's a bit more doable.
Yeah.
And again, you could look at building around that by going, you know what, I'm going to take Gurish Rage on him.
Yeah.
So and give him a defensive artifact and a defensive command trait.
Just
keep him as chunky as possible to maybe get 3 victory points at the end of the game, provided that you hold it. It is contesting an objective, not controlling an objective. So you just have to be near it.
Range, yeah.
Again, there's going to be some battle plans where you go, there are no objectives wholly outside of your territory. So all of a sudden you go, bum, can't do it.
Yeah.
So, risky. And then the day is ours. When the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy. If there are more friendly Galatian champions from your starting army on the battlefield, then there are enemy Galatian champions on the battlefield. Okay. That one is a bit more doable.
Yep.
As with all grand strategies, they're quite often, I found, hard to really achieve.
Yeah.
You've got to have a very bespoke game plan in mind.
Yeah.
There's going to be some... because it says here from your starting army. So several grand strategies and battle tactics refer to a starting army. The player's starting army is made up of the units in the army that were set up before the first battle round, including any reserve units. That means if you do come up against someone that has no Galatian champions in their starting army, you just automatically get that. Yeah. As long as you've got 1 champion alive.
So if I just took my Arcadian king, you would get it.
If I had a Galatian champion and they weren't dead.
Yeah.
So fine. Is that going to happen often? Are you going to take 1 just to help deny this? Depends on your army. Giants, sorry, you're out of luck, but you know. Yeah. And then battle tactics. As mentioned, 4 are the same. Gaining momentum, an eye for an eye, desecrate their lands, and this one's mine, all identical. There's 4 new ones, and if you said that they were all revolved around Galatian champion doing something...
You'd be right.
You'd be correct. So, you've got a matter of honor. Pick 1 enemy Galatian champion or sworn bodyguard unit that is on the battlefield. Yeah. And you complete this battle tactic if that unit is destroyed during this turn by an attack made by a friendly Galatian champion or sworn bodyguard. Very cool, very thematic, very matchup dependent. Yeah. You've then got lead the assault. You complete this battle tactic if at least 2 of the objectives that you control are in enemy territory and are each contested by a friendly Galatian champion.
Yeah. Okay.
Or by any friendly Galatian champions. So you need minimum of 2. Yeah. And the battle plan needs to have them in enemy territory. Not wholly within, so there's quite a few which are like on the edge, so they will count.
Situationally achievable.
United defense. Pick 1 objective controlled by your opponent. You complete this battle tactic if you control that opponent. Control that objective. I've read up a line. Yeah. Control that objective, and 2 or more friendly Galatian champions are contesting that objective at the end of the turn. Yeah. Again, you need 2 Galatian champions.
You need multiple foot characters.
Like having 1 Galatian champ isn't really doing you any favors in this in this sort of set of missions.
No.
Apart from cunning maneuver, maybe. which is one friendly Galletian champion on the battlefield that is more than 3 inches from all enemy units. You complete this battle tactic if at the end of the turn that Galletian champion is more than 3 inches from all enemy units and is contesting an objective you control that is wholly outside of your territory. That one is actually very doable.
Yeah.
If you've got a Galletian champion and there are objectives wholly outside of your territory, which again is very matchup dependent and list dependent.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because obviously there's a lot of battle tactics in there which involve a Galletian champion, and we do have the nullifying battalion if you are dealing with a firepower army. I admit not every army in Sigmar has the sort of firepower to really benefit from that. But I think if you're going in a competitive setting in the tournament, you're probably going to come across armies which can target your Galletian champions.
And remember that spells are exempt from that.
Yeah.
So things like Curse of Years or Arcane Bolts.
There are ways to get these foot characters still.
Yeah.
So I don't know from a competitive standpoint if you can really rely on running your army around achieving those Galletian champion battle tactics.
I just think they're too difficult.
Yeah, I'm imagining that most people are still going to be using your 4 primary battle tactics and then combining it with ones from their own book.
Yeah, like this one's mine requires your general to kill a unit that you pick.
Yeah.
Depends, again, situational, but every now and then you just go, my general's a dragon and you've got a guy on 3 wounds. I'm going to go eat him.
Yeah.
Eye for an eye. Desecrate their lands, gain momentums.
Yeah.
These are all relatively easy ones in the scope
ones you would expect to come up in a game.
I mean, like, think of it this way. Pick an enemy unit, kill it, and hold more objectives are stuff that you probably want to be doing anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's gaining momentum.
I should just be trying to play the game.
Alternatively, I could kill an enemy champion or bodyguard with one of my champions or bodyguards.
Yeah.
It's a similar mission.
Yeah, but
you're now relying on one single unit to do it.
Exactly. Whereas as opposed to an eye for an eye, it can be any unit.
Just kill any unit.
It's a lot more flexible, so therefore more achievable.
And the same thing with the grand strategies. I'm looking at the 3 of them going, fine, compared to Tame the Land, just control all the objectives that are wholly outside of your territory. Yeah. In some missions, that's like 1.
Yeah.
Defend what's ours, no enemy units wholly within your territory. And take what's theirs, which is have more friendly than enemy wholly within the enemy territory. Those are all much easier. Come on, use your words properly, chef. That is much easier. All 3 of those seem much easier to me because they are something that my whole army can do rather than I've got 3 Galletian veterans in my army. Curse of Years, one's dead.
Yeah.
Can't do my
and then you can't do it. Yeah,
can't do it at all.
Yeah, it seems. I don't know. Like again, I'd love to hear your comments because it will also educate me or us. But it seems like relying on it and sort of building around it could be a bit of a trap from a competitive point of view. For fun, do what you want. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure. I also say that looking at my own armies going, well, I probably wouldn't build around this Galletian champion rule.
You have to pivot quite hard to them. And there's going to be some armies which just, these are not in the realms of possibility. So let's use ogres, for example. Ogre characters are quite expensive or mounted on monsters. Yeah. So am I realistically going to run like a tyrant, a hunter, a butcher, and so that's nearly half my army at this point. By the time I've
I personally really needs to kill 1 to start nullifying a lot of your scoring abilities.
Seraphon, I can't remember off the top of my head if the Slan does count as mounted with his palanquin.
You need to look at it.
Yeah, but Old Bloods on foot and Eternity Wardens, fine. Skink priests, they're used quite a bit. That doesn't mean I want them in the thick of the fighting. No. Like, I don't want my skink priest running up to the opponent's thing. Stormcast might get away with it. Chaos might get away with it. Beasts of Chaos would probably get away with it. Fire Slayers will. Yeah. Unless you've got Magma Droths. There could be some play with Caradron Overlords because all of their ones are on foot. Yes. Unless the ones with balloons count as mounted, but I don't think they do. Okay. So they are technically mounted whilst aboard a ship. But so those are the ones where you kind of go, if they're hiding in a ship or game, you could drop out. Yes. Like just drop out 3 characters the last turn. You go, okay.
That's cool.
So there is play, but I don't know whether there's much play.
Yeah.
So it just feels like they've kind of done it to go, this is different. This is just do something different. Does it work?
Yeah, well, that feels like
that's what it feels like to me.
seen.
Like I say, I try and follow like the competitive scene. Will people pivot into this a lot? I don't know if it's worth it, especially compared to some of the battle tome strategies and battle tactics, which are like, I mean, I could do that, or I could just do this one, which is a lot easier.
Yeah, because that's the
and
thing.
I don't need to change my army.
Especially if you're playing competitively, you want to choose the objectives or battle tactics that are easy to achieve.
Yeah,
that's what you're going to do. What's the easiest that I can achieve this turn?
Yeah,
I'll score those points. Thank you.
I can't see the Stormcast dragon lists going, oh well, I best take 5 guys on foot now.
No.
It's just.
But let us know what you guys think, because it'll be interesting to hear your perspectives. So look, that covers the grand strategies and battle tactics, and then the rest are just battle plans. We're going to have a brief summary look at those in just a second.
Battle plans. The first 6 are the same.
There you go.
You got the Prize of Gallet, you got Realmstone Cache, you got Battle Lines Drawn. There's one slight difference in Battle Lines Drawn, and that's Confined Caverns is no longer a mission rule, so you are able to redeploy stuff by picking them up and teleporting them around.
I guess they feel that impacted
certain armies too much.
Exactly.
Lurkers Below is the same. Presence of Idols is the same. Nidus Paths is the same. We then go into the 6 new ones.
Only the worthy.
Only the worthy, not to be confused with only the faithful. All of these 6 missions, you score 2 points for battle tactics, 3 points for grand strategies as normal. The first 3 of these, you score 1 for 1 objective, 1 for 2 or more, one
for holding 2.
And 1 for holding more. Yeah. The usual that you would expect.
So up to 3 for your primary.
Yes. I've probably got the maps and the objectives for these ready, so these might pop up on screen, but suffice it to say they're all relatively similar in terms of battle plan layouts, but there's a few little differences here. So this mission has 4 objectives. Your territories are right up to each other in your sort of lengthway, or your long edge to long edge, and you have the Shrines of Conquest rule, which is, whilst there are any enemy Galletian champions within 6 of an objective, only Galletian champions can contest that objective, and no more than 1 Galletian champion can contest the same objective at the same time. Fine, you could just kill them.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, of course, sometimes.
Yeah.
And they can only be so many places at once.
Sure.
Again, if you've got 1 or 2 Galletian champions in your army, could be useful to just go, they're going to hold the tide against a horde, which is really cool. Yeah. But you best hope they survive. Path of the Champion is corner-to-corner deployment. You've got 4 objectives in the sort of the middle of all of the quarters. You have Leadership Forged in Battle. At the start of your hero phase, if any friendly Galletian champions are contesting an objective that is wholly outside of your territory, you can pick 2 battle tactics to complete this turn instead of 1.
Okay.
Now that is very interesting because that now suddenly opens up these weird extra battle tactics that you might not have considered at all. Yeah. And then suddenly go,
score.
I'm going to give it a go. Because if you've got a backup...
But it is only 1 mission.
It's 1 mission.
It's only 1 battle plan. So that,
Yeah.
So you would only expect to play that once, perhaps in an event.
Yeah. And remember, you've got a whole one that's wholly outside of your territory. So you've got to have the ones in the 2 empty quarters or the one in your opponent's territory. So,
but yeah, an interesting one there.
The Jaws of Gallet. This is a new territory layout. It's similar to the Nidus Pass, but with 1 less little box. You've got 5 objectives, 3 in the sort of the corners of each deployment. Oh, and every mission, as you would expect, is 9 inches away from the enemy territory.
Right.
As normal. As far as I can tell, that's not changed in any of these missions. And then you've got 1 smack bang in the middle. And in this mission, it's swallowed by the caverns. So at the start of each battle round after the first, so from turn 2 onwards, the player going second can pick an objective and remove it from play.
Nice.
This is great fun. It gives you an advantage to go in second, which is what I like. It can help you sort of take the sting out of a double turn, as well as occasionally give you the option to go, you know what, I don't want the first turn in this particular battle round. Yeah. If I've won the priority, I'm going to give it to you so I can remove that one that you're underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so
deny them scoring abilities.
Or the one that I was never going to get to, but that you're controlling, I'm just going to remove it and not worry about it.
You cannot score it.
So
thank you.
That's quite a good little mission.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what I mean. It's like, that doesn't need a Galletian champion. No. The first 2 do, but that one
I'm very
doesn't.
curious if these Galletian champions will become a thing in the new meta, but look, we'll see.
Battle Plan 4, Ours for the Taking. Again, doesn't actually need anything Galletian champion related to do it. This is slightly different in the victory points. What you need to do is the objective on the border of each territory is the home objective of that player. So you've got like kind of little L's across your long board edges. 1 in the center, called the center objective, and then 2 on the very far flanks called your home objective.
Well, it does say if you're holding it with the Galatian champion.
Oh, it is there. Okay, so there's something. Yeah. There's a little something
there is something in there. Yeah.
So you score 1 victory point for controlling your home objective, 1 victory point for the control of the center, 2 victory points for opponent's home objective. Score a victory point if you control the center objective and it's contested with a friendly Galatian champion.
Right.
Okay, so you get 1 extra victory point if you've got a Galatian champion.
In the center.
And they're in the center.
Yeah.
And you're controlling it.
And this has to be a foot character in the center, in Sigmar, which puts them in peril, in my opinion, generally speaking, because that tends to be where a lot of fighting happens. But okay, interesting.
I like this, that it's you get more for doing stuff, like for stealing stuff.
Yeah.
Twists and turns. Another sort of L1, but slightly longer L. Like all of these kind of just shift around a little bit. Yeah. You've got 5 objectives here, all along the diagonal center. So 1 in the center, 2 where the territories intersect, and 2 right in the corners of the battlefield, which is really interesting. I don't think I've seen that before. So you've got 1 victory point for controlling an active objective, which we'll get to in a second. 1 victory point for controlling 2 active objectives. 1 for controlling 3 or more, for controlling more active than your opponent, and the battle tactic. So hold 1, hold 2, hold more, but they have to be active. But what's active, you say? Well,
what's active?
I'll tell you. At the end of each player's turn, after victory points have been scored, the player whose turn it is must roll for each active objective they control. All objectives start as active in this game.
Yep.
Add 1 to the roll if the objective is contested by any friendly Galatian champions.
Okay.
So again, there's a little benefit to using your Galatian champions, but not necessarily necessary. On a 1 to a 3, it becomes inactive.
Okay.
So a 1 to a 2 if you've got a Galatian champion, and on a 4+, it remains active. And at the start of each player's hero phase, the player's turn it is rolls for each inactive objective that they control. On a 1 to a 3, it remains inactive. On a 4+, it becomes active with you +1 to your roll if you've got a Galatian champion.
Yeah.
Fine. So there could be games where all of the objectives are active turn 1 and then they're never active for the rest of the game, which is quite funny.
Yeah.
There could be games where that never comes up at all. What's interesting about this one is that you've got objectives right in the
in the far
no man's land,
well.
far corners of the game, which is quite interesting. It really takes stuff away, ironically, from that middle.
Yeah.
You want to run stuff over to there to grab it and then join the fight in the middle.
That's right.
So it's an interesting one. And then the final one is position over power. Again, a unique deployment map. So it's flush territories, but only half the board, smack bang in the middle. You've got 2 objectives smack in the middle of those, and then you've got 2, again, right on the edges of the board, along your short board edge, smack in the middle. Those are your flank objectives.
Right.
Your flank objectives can potentially disappear. And by potentially, I mean at the start of the 4th battle round. They are just removed from play. There's no rolls for it. It's just they are gone. So you can only score those relatively early.
Yeah.
And in terms of scoring, you score 1 for controlling at least 1 objective, 2 for 2 or more, 1 for 2 or more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
Up to 3, right?
Yeah, 1 for holding more. 1 if you control any flank objectives that are contested by a friendly Galatian champion.
Okay, so you can score up to 4 then?
You could score, so if you're holding more objectives than your opponent and you've got a Galatian champion in range of a flank objective, you could score 4 on that.
Okay.
Again, you need Galatian champion, you need to be controlling it, and they need to be in range. And those are disappearing in turn 4 anyway.
Yeah, number of factors.
They're all quite interesting.
Yeah.
Are the little twists that the Galatian champions give you in those missions enough? I'm not 100% convinced.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not sure. Also, I'm not sure because it really comes down to tournament format, right? You know, generally there'll be 6 games, say, over the course of a weekend.
8 games if you're playing in a mega super major.
Like, you know, and there are 12 battle plans in here, right? So are you guaranteed using all 6 of the new ones, or is it still a mix of the old and the new?
Yeah. Is it going to be random?
Is it going to be random? So at that point, you know, I don't know. Yeah. Obviously, I'm assuming when you go to an event, you're going to know what the battle plans are. So therefore, you would build a list around it. Yeah. But I don't know how this will affect the meta. I would love to hear your thoughts.
If you suddenly got Games Workshop or who's the other big one that runs Age of Sigmar in the UK? I mean, you've got the UKTC, you've got the ITC, you've got WTC. I mean, there's dozens of organisations that do it, including us eventually.
Yes.
Are they going to go, let's just use all 6 of the new battle plans? At that point, probably people will go, yeah, I'll take some Galletian veterans just so I can get a few extra points here or there. If they go, we're going to do a 50-50 mix. You might take 1 or 2
to try and lean
into
have
it.
the ability to score, which would make sense.
But if they just go for the originals, or they go like a 60-40 split and go, we're going to use 4 of the new ones and 2 of the old ones, or 4 of the old ones and 2 of the new ones, you might not bother.
And if you're an army that is pretty much always has at least a foot character in it, like my Soulblight Gravelards always has a Vampire Lord on foot, probably a Necromancer. Yeah. Great, you know, I get it anyway, right? You know, they automatically get the Galletian champion keyword. So, okay, look, that's it.
Yeah. I'm more interested to see how the deployments and the objective placements will kind of work out with these new missions, because some of them are really interesting.
Sure.
I'm really loving twists and turns just because it's so weird to have an objective right in the bottom corner of the battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. Do you prefer this season's pack over the previous season? So season 1. This is season 2 of 2022-2023. 2020-2023, it's like the super future.
That'll be like season 1,000,000.
But let us know what you think comparatively. Is this a better pack than the previous one? I don't think it's fair for us to say whether it is or isn't, because I don't have enough experience with the first one. Educate us in the comments below.
Let us know.
That's it. For now, I've been Lawrence, he's been Chef, and we'll see you in another review very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.